and welcome to Chin Hairs and F-Bombs Conversations with Girlfriends. This is your gal pal, Sal. I am joining you today from the Lady Lounge, and I have my friend Julie with me. Yay! Welcome, Julie. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yay. Cool. Okay, so I am going to tell you a little bit about this podcast, what we do here, and also what we're going to talk about today. So this podcast was born out of conversations with girlfriends. So Julie and I have been friends for many years, and we have had many heart-to-hearts over cocktails or
Beach walks.
Yes. And we have shared a lot with each other, and it has meant the world to me. And you have helped me through some really hard times.
Oh,
and
likewise.
I appreciate it so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I always feel better after talking with a good girlfriend. And that's why this podcast exists. So we're going to chat it out. We're going to talk about something that is important to both of us, which is anxiety. So Julie and I both have struggled with anxiety to different levels at different times in our lives. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. I am SallyAnn Gray. I am your host here, and I am a 44-year-old woman living in Maine with my mister and my 2 children, and I am a writer and a Midwesterner at heart. So that's who I am, and now I would love for Julie to tell you who she is.
Hello, I'm Julie. I am a mom to a 5-year-old son. I have a partner named Matt, and I'm a business owner. I own Roots Up and Radiant Beginnings, and I've been on a deep mission to help children develop self-soothing strategies so that they can navigate life's inevitable twists and turns with more resilience and tools in their toolkit.
I love it. And actually, that's how Julie and I met, was through her work and my work. And I got to meet Julie at a
ladies network, or not network.
Yeah.
It was a networking.
Yeah, it was like-minded business owners. So
But
that was many years ago. That was like 2017 or 18. Yeah. And so we worked together professionally, and then our relationship blossomed, and we became friends through that. And now I consider you one of my closest friends.
Yeah, me too. Okay. And remember our karaoke night, going out dancing? I think that's when we were like, okay, yeah.
That solidified it.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun.
That was so fun. Was that the night that we ended up dancing?
On something?
Yes, we were dancing on something.
It wasn't a bar, but it was some sort of barricade.
It wasn't a table.
I don't remember. Yeah.
It just was, we were on top of something. We were up.
That was the end of the night.
That was the end of the night.
It's time to go.
Oh my gosh. So we had done karaoke before that?
You did. I cheered you on. Hello, anxiety.
Oh my God. Right. Well, me too. I don't know how I do some of these things.
I have an idea or two.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that was like the blossoming of our friendship. It was like, because it is hard to go from being professional colleagues and peers to friends.
Absolutely.
Like, how do you make that transition? Like, does she want to be my friend?
Yeah. And then we were just like, oh, we have fun together too. Yeah. So let's do this.
Yeah, that was awesome. Wonderful. I love it. So now we know who you are, we know who I am, and now we're going to talk about anxiety. So I would love for you to start and kind of talk about how anxiety has shown up in your life. When did you first identify this is anxiety? Because for me, it was much later in life.
Yeah, I would say same.
Really?
I always felt different, even as a child, but yeah, I don't think I knew it was anxiety. I just felt something is different about me, but I don't know what it is. And then later on, I think probably when I was maybe between like 18 and 22, I was like, oh yeah, this is anxiety. Okay, what am I going to do about it?
Yeah. Nobody talked about anxiety when I was growing up. No.
No.
I mean, I think my parents were on like anti-anxiety medications, but nobody talked about anything.
No. Well, the stigma is
Yeah.
just huge. And it was you know, you kind of suck it up and deal with it. And that was the mentality back then.
Yeah.
So just different. But I remember having a video of me when I was turning, I don't know, I maybe 2 or 3. And I despised the happy birthday song and people gathering around me and singing.
Yeah.
It was super uncomfortable. So even at 2, everybody's singing happy birthday to me at a family birthday party.
You're the center of attention.
Yep. And I just, like, I see my innocent little face just being like, this is not what I want right now, like visibly uncomfortable. So after seeing that, I was like, okay, I have had anxiety my entire life, but I didn't really know. I wouldn't have called it that until I was probably 18 or 20.
Yeah.
And then the story continues. But
Yeah. I always considered myself a worrier. Oh, I just worry a lot. And then later I was like, oh, I'm an overthinker, which are both true things. But I got older and I was in my late 30s and I'm very literate in depression and that side of mental health. It took me like researching anxiety for me to be like, oh my God, I totally have that. I didn't know.
Yep.
I didn't know this wasn't like normal, whatever normal is.
Right.
Yeah. So it took me a long time to know that was something going on in my life. But there have definitely been different times in my life when it's been more intense than others.
Yep, same. Yeah, I feel like as far back as I can remember, it's whether it's just being more codependent, always needing a friend, or not wanting to raise my hand in school because I would freeze and, just feel the physical sensations of anxiety. But I don't think I knew it was anxiety at that time.
Yeah.
I played sports when I was younger, and if it got too intense, I would sit on the sidelines. I'd fake out a bellyache or something to that degree.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think back to little moments that now I'm like, oh yeah, that was definitely anxiety, but nobody picked up on it.
You are so reminding me. Okay, one time I was doing a debate tournament and I got called up to the big leagues because somebody was sick and I had no reason to be debating with this league of people. And I was so nervous. I gave myself my period.
Wow.
I kid you not. Oh my God. I was like 16 years old and I fucking gave myself my period because I was so nervous about what I was getting ready to do.
Did you go?
I did it. Yeah.
You did it.
I'm sure I did a terrible job. I had no reason to be debating with those people. And they were like, we need you to be the fireball. And I'm like, that's not who I am.
The pressure, my gosh.
I was this teeny tiny 16-year-old.
Oh.
It was crazy.
I remember playing soccer, and you could play with the varsity when you were in, freshman or whatever. And I remember them asking me, and I was like, nope, I don't want to. I'm not interested. Nope. Because I just couldn't, it was eating me alive. Like I just couldn't even imagine doing it. And it's, I think back and I'm like, oh, little Julie, you could have done it. Just the self-talk that I wish had been able to shift when I was younger, which is, why I do the work that I do, is like the positive affirmations that you can sneak in or just, give yourself a little pep talk or take things slower and not feel like you have to jump all the way into something and feel out of capacity.
Yeah. Well, I have dealt with stage fright my entire life, but I still push myself to do things that put me on a stage. And my anxiety is just, cranked up to 11. All the different things I've done. I mean, I've performed a fair amount. I have sung like in weddings and in funerals, and I have done improv on a stage, and I've done stand-up comedy on a stage, and I've played a guitar on a stage, and many different ways. I was 38 years old and I was in Portland Fringe Fest. I had never been in a play in my life, and I was in Fringe Fest and did like 3 performances of a play.
Wow.
And so I keep pushing myself through that discomfort, and it is hard, but I just kept doing it.
Yep. Because I know we talked about this before, but the window of tolerance, right? Like if you are way outside your window of tolerance, you wouldn't even be able to do that. Or maybe at some points in your life, you wouldn't be able to get up on stage because you're having a more of an anxious time or you're nearing panic attacks. But then if you've got it kind of settled and you push yourself a little bit, I do the same thing. I sang at my wedding, and I've done public speaking courses. And when I'm in my anxiety depression phase, I look back at my, past self. I'm like, how did that was me, right? I did that, but how? Because I definitely could not do it right now. But it's like, because we know what it feels like to be past our window of tolerance, where it's like, I can't even do anything. So that when you have a little bit of bandwidth, stepping in a little bit further is more empowering, because you know that it's just more empowering, and not like, I'm going to just turn into a pile of dust right now after doing this thing.
You're right. You're so right. It is empowering to face the challenge, have the anxiety and the nerves, face the challenge, and pull through and not die as you feel like you're going to. And then you're like, wow, I am such a badass. And that's a good feeling. Yeah. But you're so right that there are times in your life, there are definitely years in my recent history where none of that was possible.
Yep.
None of that was possible to stand on a stage and push myself through some of that stuff. Thank you for, that's so true. So what about panic attacks?
Oh, panic attacks. How fun. They feel so good, don't they?
I remember my first panic attack, and I did not know what was going on.
Yeah.
And I was 19 years old, and it had something to do with the boy that I was dating at that time. And I don't know, he was away, and I don't know what happened, but my body just like freaked out. And you're kind of like, what is happening in my body right now? And I felt like I was going to die, and I was kind of like hyperventilating, and then that upset my stomach. So then I thought I was going to throw up.
Yes.
And I was like, what is going on in my body right now? Because it also didn't feel like whatever had triggered it, it didn't feel like or seem like a big deal. So then for your body's reaction to be so big, you feel fucking crazy.
Yep.
And I had no idea it was a panic attack at the time. It took me a few days, and I was like, oh my God, that was a panic attack. And then I didn't have another one for years.
Wow. How old were you?
I was 19 at that time. That was my first panic attack. And then I didn't start having panic attacks again until my late 30s.
Yep. Yeah. I feel like I think I had panic attacks when I was little that resulted into nausea, just this cycle of like negative thinking, hyperventilation, but really being internal with them, because I didn't want anyone to know I was suffering. So I suffered a lot in silence.
Yeah, you're masking.
Yes, totally. Masking it all.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize that I had panic attacks until I think I went to a therapist when I moved out here. And she said, are you sure you don't have a panic disorder? I was like, well, I don't know what's panic disorder. And then I did an evaluation. I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I've been going through. So that was when I was in my, mid-30s. I didn't know that those were panic attacks.
Yep.
I thought they were anxiety attacks. But now I realize that, yeah, that was panic disorder. And I do have panic disorder.
Okay, so is there a difference between an anxiety attack and a panic attack? Are those different?
I didn't think so, but I don't know. I don't know if they're looped into the same category or I think of a panic attack from my perspective being a lot more physical, and I don't know if that could be very untrue. I'm not sure, but I think of it as when I think of a tidal wave, thinking of a tidal wave just washing over me and feeling completely out of control and kind of doing this spin cycle under the wave and just not being able to think clearly, body's just so tense, super nauseous, just completely feeling like shit.
And being out of control.
Totally out of control.
Yep.
And all of the tools that I have, unable to access any of them.
They are
locked they're
away.
Gone. They're nope, prefrontal cortex shut down, no longer can think clearly, can't communicate clearly, and just you're in a pile of something.
Yeah, and like I said, so often what trips you over that looks like a nothing burger. And then to other people, you look crazy, or you think you look crazy, and you feel crazy, especially if you're just not aware of how much you got impacted or whatever.
Yeah. The little build-up moments, which, that's why apparently I'm completely fascinated by the window of tolerance, because it's like if we all knew that we had this window that we need to stay inside, and once we get outside it, that's when you're more likely to get dysregulated and have the panic attacks. So then those little checkpoints basically wouldn't feel like when you had a panic attack, it wouldn't be like, oh, this feels so silly and so stupid, but it's like, oh, but all these little pieces added up to this bigger event.
Yeah. Okay. So you were totally making sense out of my 36-hour transatlantic panic attack that I had in November of 2022. And it started in Portland, Maine at a pharmacy where I was getting ready to get on an international flight and I needed my antidepressants because Mama needed her antidepressants. And I was leaving for 9 days. And I show up to the pharmacy and they don't have the medication. My doctor's office had called in the wrong medication. And so that set me off. And I was so worked up. I got really worked up because I was so afraid of going on a trip without my medication that I deeply needed at that time.
Yeah.
And then I was crying in a pharmacy. And I got so worked up. I got so worked up and I couldn't leave the pharmacy until they had my drugs. And I had to call a friend and I texted Ben, and that set me off outside of my window of tolerance. And so then I got on an international flight and I was trying to put on a brave face and I was trying to pull through. I can do this. I'm tough. And that flight, it ended up being 4 flights. Portland to New York to London to Amsterdam, then a train from Amsterdam to Dusseldorf, Germany.
I feel anxious for you right now.
I know. And it started on that note. And then on the international flight, it was overnight. And so you're supposed to sleep. And I couldn't. And I was sat bolt upright for like 6 hours. And I had 4 alcoholic drinks, which was too much. And I had 30 minutes to sleep. And everything went bad after that. And I got explosive diarrhea.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. I gave myself my period again. True story.
How do you give yourself your period?
I don't know.
I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah. Welcome to my medical mystery. They're going to have to name something after me. Oh my God. And then the worst part, the part that I was like, oh, this is it, was I was on the 3rd flight. And I'm in a center seat. Ben's on my left. A stranger is on my right. I have no elbow space. And the guy on my right is a big man. I am overheating because I'm so hot and I'm like in the middle of a 36-hour panic attack. I was wearing a t-shirt and my naked skin was touching this strange man's naked skin. And I just had tears streaming out of the corners of my eyes, falling down my face onto my chin. I was wearing sunglasses and I was just like,
sensory nightmare.
oh my God, how am I going to make it through this? And I wasn't even done.
Did Ben know what you were going through?
He knew
Okay.
Yeah. He was protecting me. He was taking care of me. He was getting me fed when I needed to be fed. He was doing everything that he could. And it was horrible.
The sleep piece and the alcohol. I feel like sleep and alcohol, the combo that feed off of each other, but just exacerbate symptoms.
Yes.
And how sweet of Ben to be able to feed you and all of those things, but then you can only do so much.
Oh my God. When we finally got into the Airbnb, we were on the top floor. It was 91 steps straight up to get to this goddamn Airbnb. And I was like, so I'm not leaving now. I think you need to go get some food and I need for this day to end. But I was outside of my window of tolerance. I was triggered from the jump. And then everything built on it. And it was horrible.
Oh, I'm sorry that you experienced that. That's a long time.
It was a really long time to be so dysregulated, so out of sorts.
Do you have Xanax?
No.
Because that would have been in that situation. Moment. That's I have no control. All I need to do is sleep this off and get a solid even 2 hours where my brain is just not in, or it's the brain and the body, the tension, right?
Yes.
Just able to settle so that you can get yourself back to baseline, because that is it's too much, and then you can't do anything. You're literally just
it took me days to recover. I just kept to myself for a few days and I took it really easy, and I just walked a lot and watched a lot of Netflix.
Yes. You're smart. You know what you need. You knew what you needed in that situation.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to have a call with my therapist while I was there, and she was like, you just need to take care of yourself. Yeah. And she gave me this like permission slip to do nothing. Yes. And I was in a foreign land. I felt like I needed to enjoy where I was, and take advantage of being away. And it was like, nope, that's not for me right now. I need to take care of myself. I had the luxury of not needing to parent. My children weren't there. Yep. And so I just needed to cocoon and get myself okay. And then I was okay. And I was able to have a good second half of the trip.
That's huge. That's really big to have fun after that.
Yeah, it was so epic. But so I also want to say, like, panic attacks, anxiety attacks, whatever you call it, they can be so different from person to person, from situation to situation.
Absolutely.
Right? And that's something nobody ever told me. No. Like, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know how it presented. I thought it was one thing. And to realize that it can present itself in different ways in different situations was like, oh, okay.
Yep. That was my revelation too. I always thought about, panic attacks are, you're breathing in the paper bag and it's this big wild thing and you're flailing about, and that's why I never thought that mine were panic attacks. Wow. Because they were so internal, and I've been masking for so long that anything outward that drew attention to me, that made me more anxious.
Right.
So even Matt, I would hide my panic from him too, because I just didn't want I didn't want to draw attention because it just exacerbated my panic or anxiety. So I just learned to just keep it internal, which now,
the body keeps the score.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then looking at the correlation between trauma and anxiety and learning,
Exactly.
oh, this is a trauma response
Exactly.
and I need different things.
So thank you for bringing up trauma, because what I have learned about myself in this period of my life is that the bad years that I have had, where I was really struggling with depression and anxiety through 2018 to 2023, really, very recently, that I was in an almost constant trauma response.
Same.
And I didn't know it. And so I didn't give myself like the compassion that was necessary.
Yep.
You know, like I said, it seems like a nothing burger and you freak out. Like, aren't you the crazy one? Yep. But I had to learn what my triggers were and honor when they happen, and that I need the things that I need to get me to okay. Because you can't stop the trigger. It's going to show up. You don't know. Surprise, surprise, babe. And then your brain shuts down. Your lizard brain comes online. Your logical brain comes offline. And you're in the shit. And how do you get okay again?
Yep.
And it took me a lot of years to get the right toolbox for getting out and taking care of myself. But what was the biggest game changer for me, and the reason why I'm not on anti-anxiety medication anymore, I don't have anxiety right now, is because I healed my trauma.
Yes.
And so I spent all this painful work healing my trauma, doing talk therapy, EMDR, ketamine, and journaling like a motherfucker.
Yep.
Processing the fuck out of all of this childhood trauma.
Oof. Yeah, it's a lot of work.
Yeah, and not just childhood trauma, adult trauma, like trauma, baby.
Things. Yep.
And processing all of that, which was painful and not fun, and a bad hobby, just kidding. And then the triggers don't hit me like they used to. Yeah, I have a big problem with rejection. Rejection is really hard for me. I also, feeling abandoned is really hard for me. And that will always be true my whole life. But what I have done, it's an and, I have looked at those original wounds, processed that pain, got it out of my body, which took a lot of embodiment practice too. And now my baseline is just so much better.
That's beautiful.
And the fact that I was able to go off of my anti-anxiety medications a month ago. I'm a month clean.
That's incredible. That's a lot. And I've witnessed all of the tools that you've been digging into and trying and seeing, and, you know, body work and Reiki. And you've really taken a dive in to see what works. And it hasn't been a fast approach, because it takes as long as it's going to take, which is always the hardest thing to hear. It's everyone's journey is so different. And
that's a kick in the nuts.
But you're like, how long is this one going to take?
Yeah, but and how expensive is this going to be?
Yep, and
Jesus
it is.
Christ.
It's such a privilege, right? I think that's part of my passion, is giving kids, especially kids, but also adults, the tools that we already have inside of us, because these therapies are expensive and it's, you know, it's just, they're not always accessible, and they're not always accessible all the time, you know? So, it's the toolkit for everything, whether it's, you know, going to get a Reiki session, or doing counting breath, or taking a bath, or sticking your head in a cold water, you know, situation, or putting ice cubes on your wrists, and the list goes on, but you don't know what you need until you experience it. Like, oh, I love massages. I love that deep pressure. And other people might be like, oh, I don't want touch at all. That is not my thing. But
there's a lot of trial and error with figuring out what works for you, it might not work for you this time.
Yep.
It might the other time. Breath work has been really important to me. So I do 4-7-8 breathing every day.
Wow, that's
Every
great.
day, multiple times a day. I do it with my son. It helps me get regulated.
Yep.
And he knows to use it to get regulated too. And he's a neurodivergent kid.
Yep.
And so he's used that. And box breathing is good too. But 4-7-8 is really like my go-to. But I've also done some like deep breath work too that has been really impactful in my life too. Well, and you know, there were definitely a lot of times when I just had to go to bed about it.
Yes.
I just had to stop humaning, stop peopling, and be like, so that's it. I'm maxed out for the day. This was a load of shit.
Yep.
And go to bed about it. And there is no shame in that game.
Oh, no. Never any shame.
Yeah.
I mean, my whole life, I feel like I coped with alcohol and weed and staying busy and all the things.
Yes.
And so it's not until lately that I have been really looking at the coping skills that I've used, not with any judgment, but just, hey, that's what I had to do at that time. And everybody is on a different journey at a different time and a different place, and it's all okay, but we're just on different trajectories.
Yeah. I mean, I've felt really lucky that you and I have been on similar paths at similar times.
We totally have.
Yeah, it's been so wild to like be on this journey with you.
Yeah.
And the pandemic was exceedingly hard for both of us.
Yeah.
Everyone has their own pandemic story.
Yep.
You know, how it impacted you, what was hard, what wasn't.
Yep.
You know, as some people have good pandemic stories and they like lost a bunch of weight and learned a new language. I don't think those people had children
at the same time. Like, what was that like? You came out amazing from it. I mean, we did too. We just had to like, you know, go through some dark shit. But I remember vividly going to Rivka's house, and I had a lot of shame and stigma around taking medication for anxiety. And I had a Xanax, and at that point, I just had a Xanax on me. I didn't take it before, but we were having this, like, Rivka was sharing this very intense story, and I was just feeling outside my window of tolerance for many reasons, just feeling dysregulated. Yeah. And I remember just being like, all right, can I tough this out? Should I get in my car and just drive home? What should I do? I'm like listening to the story, but also having this inner dialogue at the same time. And I remember just stopping and being like, hey guys, I'm feeling super anxious right now. I'm going to go outside. And I went outside. I took a deep breath. I tried to do some yoga. I tried to do a bunch of things to get regulated. And I knew, I'm like, nothing is going to help. Like I could just tell. And I said to you all, I said to you too, all y'all, I was like, I got to take a Xanax, you guys. And it was the first time that I ever declared that out loud, because I was such a internal sufferer. I didn't want anyone ever knowing. And you know, it was just such a big deal for me to even say that. And obviously you guys weren't like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with you? Or like, are you okay? It was just not, you were just like, yeah. You got to do what you got to do. And then we sat down and I shared during the pandemic, my son was diagnosed with autism. And that has been my trauma story for the last, I would say, I've been really digging into it for the last year, realizing that my brain is also wired differently, and all of my anxiety growing up was not necessarily just plain anxiety, but trying to live in a world that was not designed for me, and to think about all of the masking that I have done to get through social situations. And I always thought of myself as being pretty authentic. And at certain points in my life, I was definitely like, I don't give a shit what people think. This is who I am. But then I think the more that I would cycle into different times in my life where there's maybe more pressure, like becoming a new mom. Oh my gosh, the like, wait, this is what a mom's supposed to do, or this is what I'm supposed to dress like, or, you know, just observing what are people supposed to do.
Shoulds.
The shoulds all over the place. And so it's just, it's, you know, it's kind of like going to kindergarten for the first time and seeing how people are supposed to act as maybe a neurodivergent person who was living in a little bubble on my street with my neighborhood friends, and then being like, oh, okay, this is how I'm supposed to act. Is kind of how I felt being a new mom. And then that, I think, just triggered so much in me. And then Finn was diagnosed with autism and ADHD. And that's when I started really looking and unpacking, oh my God, this is not just anxiety. This is not just a panic disorder. This is autism and ADHD. And it has been the biggest challenge and darkness that I've ever experienced. And at the same time, it's been the most beautiful gift that I have ever received, because the boundaries that I'm able to put in place now, and this is all new. This is like, you know, today, like every day I have new little moments of awakening, of being like, oh my gosh, yes, I can stick up for myself. I can say, Sally, that incense is so strong. Can you please put it out, and not hesitate, and, you know, just sticking up for myself in ways that before I just, you're fine. Don't say it. Don't be high maintenance. We're not asking that. You're just going to be quiet, and you're going to be a people pleaser. And that is what I've been doing for 40 years of, I'm 40. So for 40 years of my life, I've just been just conforming. And I am so fucking done with it. So I say that in like with a smile on my face, but in the same light, it has not been light. It has been lots of darkness to get to this point. But it has brought so much clarity about who I am, and the compassion, and just learning what I need and who I want to hang out with. And I'm like, my favorite people are neurodivergent. What, I was like fooling myself at one point, you know, like even just being a new mom, being like, thinking about the people that I was attracting, it didn't feel like I was like aligning with who I was. And then I kept like trying to, I don't know, I was like trying so hard, and I was recognizing that. And then I was like, no wonder why I was so dysregulated, so exhausted.
They weren't the right fit.
Just trying so hard to, you know, also making new friends when you're in your mid-30s, whatever, when in general, but like as an adult, making new friends, and then you have a baby who's colicky and you know, a challenging, you know, I have a very spirited, love him to death. He's my best friend, but he is, you know, he's a challenging little love fucker, you know? So, it's just the dysregulation that I've had to face has brought me so many new tools that I never had before. And mainly, they're not tools like, I've been practicing yoga for 20 years. I teach yoga. I love mindfulness. I do all that. But the biggest tools that have helped are self-acceptance, boundary setting, and self-compassion. And
which are not, you just can't order those off the menu and get them. Like,
no,
they're real hard to get.
And you have to go through the shit to figure it out. Unfortunately, you can't say, oh, you're suffering. Here's my list that has really helped me. Boop. To another person, they'd be like, well, this isn't helpful. It's such an internal journey.
So a truism that I keep coming back to is trying to treat the symptoms is like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. And what you really need to treat is the cause. And that's when I finally got better, was when I was treating the trauma instead of the depression and the anxiety with medication. Okay, so we're going to dull all those bad feelings and also dull all my good feelings, which I have copious amounts of, but not work on the real reason why I'm actually fucked up. Like, that's
The root.
Yeah, the root cause. And so that's why I think self-help books don't work, because it's not a matter of tasks or behaviors that you do. If you just do this, like, stop being sad. Like, okay,
Right, thanks.
yeah,
That works every time.
yeah. It's like the bad boss that I had that would say, "Don't worry, don't panic."
Ugh.
Okay, well, how about
Great.
you go fuck yourself,
Yes.
because I can't
See
stop
you.
this.
Right. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So also, like, getting that diagnosis, getting that understanding of how your brain actually works, and whether the diagnosis is self-diagnosis or through a professional, because going through the steps, going through the steps to get officially diagnosed for whatever the thing may be, can be really expensive and really time consuming. And there is no shame in self-diagnosing.
Absolutely.
For whatever the thing may be, ADHD, autism, anxiety, depression. Like, you know yourself.
Yeah.
But I love the forgiveness that you can reach in yourself once you understand, oh, I'm not an asshole. I'm not a fuck up. My brain works different.
Yep. Or I'm not stupid. I had that playing, and that's my hardest one, is I'm not smart enough. Why can't I do this? And then I would look at my amazing friends and be like, well, they're so smart. I have to be a little bit smart. There's got to be some sort of disconnect here. And so now I think back, oh my gosh, yeah, because if you're neurodivergent, you have strengths and challenges. Yeah. And so I would always, if I couldn't do something that my brain, wouldn't allow me to do, I would beat myself up over it. And I'd be like, I am stupid. Why can't I do this thing that is so easy for everybody else?
I hate that statement.
But it just carries on in everything. So I feel like that's the work that I'm doing right now, is when that pops up, it's like, Julie, your brain is wired differently. And healing my inner child and thinking about how these patterns show up in my immediate family.
Yeah, so. Patterns for real. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. And like, I just think of them as worn neural pathways that we just fall into these grooves because that's what we know, but they can be really maladaptive.
Yes. And I feel grateful in the sense that I've gone through bouts of anxiety and depression. Big transitions will cause it. So, motherhood, moving across country, and just doing things that really shake up the nervous system. Yeah. So trusting that, okay, this is a phase, or these are the things that I need to learn to get to the other side, and knowing that even now, okay, I'm on an upward trajectory, and I also know that I will likely have another bout of that, but I am trusting that because I've figured out the root cause of my anxiety, it's not going to be as bad. Now I feel like it's more maintenance. Yeah. What do I need to stay in my window of tolerance at that baseline? And when I start to feel like I'm creeping out, I can ask for help. I can speak up, which are two things that I never, ever 100%. Did.
Right. Absolutely. God forbid we burden anyone.
Oh, forget about it. Jeez. No.
Right.
But I'll give endlessly, but I forget about asking.
Right.
No.
Right. Right. I know. I am still working on that, trusting that I have the tools to get through the next hard thing.
Same.
Yeah. And my therapist has talked to me a lot about it. It's like, because I will get anxious about things that haven't happened yet. Okay, right? I will get anxious like now-ish about like the next time something hard happens. And my therapist kind of has to talk me off the ledge that like, Sal, you got this. Like, you have the tools, you've done the work, you are better at asking for help, you are better at boundaries, you have the support network. And I still get scared.
Because it's fresh, right?
Yeah.
You said you're only a month out of being off of anxiety meds. And so that's not a long time. And I think, I don't know how long we need in order to trust that we do have it, but I feel the same way where it's like, oh my gosh, am I able to handle another something that comes my way? I've already taken on all these really traumatic things, and what happens if another one comes on my plate? And I think the only way that we can know that we got it is when we experience it. Because if someone's going to tell me, you got it, Julie, like, you can do it, remember you did X, Y, and Z, but it's those baby steps to self-trust again. Because I'm in the same boat too. I'm like, this is really fresh, I don't know, do I have it? The self-doubt and the not trusting. And it's like, of course we're resilient, but when you've experienced multiple traumas over and over again, it's not just, you got to your root cause, but we also had root cause on top of, I probably had 7 major traumas that happened in a period of 3 years. And so, your nervous system can only handle so much. And when you're constantly dysregulated, what can you do?
Oh my God. Yeah.
So it's like, do you feel like you were like not meant to, like, not everything happens for a reason, but like clearly there was a period in your life where you like, that was happening for your sole purpose. And now, because you've handled all those things, you're on a different path. I just think about it from like a spiritual perspective too. Like, we had to go through what we had to go through to somehow
to get where we are now.
In this moment.
Well, and I'm still trying to figure out.
You don't have to think about it as the big, I need to do it. It's like the baby steps, the little planting of the seeds. You're doing it.
Yeah, the chipping away.
You're not sitting on your ass being like, one day I'd like to do this thing, but instead I'm going to do blah, blah, blah.
And so there's trust in that too, right? Like, I've had to trust that things are revealing themselves to me.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, and you only see it when it's past and you're like, oh, that's why that happened.
Exactly.
Right.
It's the hindsight, which is huge, I think, for trauma, because if you're not making sense of what happened, then it just, I don't know. Then it's like, then you feel like a victim.
Yes,
you're a victim.
Exactly.
And you're like, this is awful.
Yes.
Life is against me. Life sucks. Everyone is a piece of shit. And I'm angry. I can't trust anyone. I'm angry. I'm miserable. And I am going to be a shut-in. And I'm done with this world.
Exactly. Yes. Which is how I totally felt in 2020.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
100%.
Yes.
Right. That is what has really helped heal me, is making sense of it. And so all the writing that I do, all of the journaling, I filled 5 journals in 2023.
Wow.
All of the journal that I'm doing, I call it meaning making. And when I can turn this into almost like a narrative, like, gosh, make me the main character, put me in the hero seat. When I can apply meaning to it, then it's like, okay, the suffering wasn't for nothing.
It was definitely not for nothing.
Yeah.
And obviously it's easier said than, when you're in it, you're like, no, this, don't tell me that it's like never going to end. But like, when you can literally like take a step outside of your trauma, I mean, even when people aren't very kind and you're being kind, or I'm being kind, I'm not like defensive about it. I'm like, oh, that person's having a really hard time. And I'm way more compassionate, because I remember being so annoyed when someone would like super happy, like uppity. And I'm like, oh, must be nice to be so happy. Or even seeing my mom come over and she's just a genuinely happy person. And I'm like, I wish I was that happy again. Like, why aren't I that happy? And I would just get really like sad about it. And just like the shifts in people and connection and the state of the world and just, how people move through the world and being more kind and compassionate for people's journeys.
Yeah, which, sometimes I can be really compassionate and sometimes I'm totally not, right? So you did a really interesting treatment.
I did.
For your anxiety.
I will start out by saying I have done virtually everything in the world when it comes to calming my nervous system, daily yoga, mindfulness, eating healthy, supplements, blah, blah, blah. I'm a Reiki practitioner. I'm a Reiki master. I have done a lot of research, books, things, tools, you name it, I've done it. Okay, so I'm at my panic attack journey edge, and I think of this as a God wink or something. I get this flyer in the mail and it says, cure your panic attacks naturally or, without medication. And I will say, I've been on medication in the past. I'm not currently on medication. It usually does not react well with my body. So that's why I call it freeballing it for a while.
I call it
raw dogging my life. I've been doing that for a long time. So when something pops up and it piques my curiosity, I'm like, okay. So it says panic attacks and breathing, and I'm a yoga teacher and all these things. So I'm like, oh, well, that is, sounds something very in line with what I would believe.
And this just showed up in your mailbox.
It just shows up. But it has my insurance info on it. So I'm like, okay, that seems legit. I do some research. I learn more about the company and I read a Reddit on this person's experience, but there wasn't a ton out there. So I was just like a little skeptical.
Because it's new.
It was new.
Yeah.
So it's called Freespira, FREESPIRA. So I was like, I'm going to give it a try. I've got nothing to lose. At the time of when I got the flyer, it was the end of January. And I said, what if I just took February as my month of really just taking good care, slowing down, no drinking, no smoking, no doing any kind of coping skill except for this program.
Yeah.
So what it was, it tested my CO2 levels. So if you have PTSD or panic attacks, your CO2 levels are either elevated or they're low. And so what this program did was it had you breathe with these tones while it tested my CO2. So it would be like, whoop, whoop. So I would inhale on one whoop and then exhale on the other.
And so it was a little device.
It was a little device. Like I had a little tablet that they sent, a cannula, which is the little plastic thing that you put in your nose for oxygen. And I plugged it in, and it was able to test my CO2 levels in real time. And so as I trained my breath with the tones, it was 17 minutes twice a day, so a definite commitment. So for 28 days, 17 minutes twice a day, I would do this breathing. And so every week it would change the tone. And what that was doing, it was teaching my body to start to breathe more in a regulated way, which I'm like, well, I take deep breaths. I do yoga all the time. My breath should be fine. But no, my CO2 levels, I think it was from the massive amount of trauma that I had experienced in such a short amount of time, my CO2 levels were super low.
Really?
And had I known that, imagine if we could just check our CO2 levels and be like, hey, how are you doing with CO2 levels? Maybe we need to regulate our breath to get back to a baseline, more regulated state. So, so after the first week of it, I remember feeling really lightheaded and dizzy because the breath pattern was really kind of quick.
Oh, that's hard.
And it was making me more anxious. And I was like, okay, I'm going to stick with this. They give you a coach. So every week I would meet with this therapist that was also a coach. And I remember week 2, I was just like getting a little bit hard on myself because I was like, I cannot bring my CO2 levels down. I'm breathing with the tones, but nothing's happening. And by week 3, I started to notice a shift in how I was feeling, especially you know, even from a social anxiety perspective, things that I'd be like, oh, I need a drink for that. I would just show up and not feel like I need any kind of tool to support me through it. And so I just kept noticing these ways that I was getting myself back again. And so, yeah, by week 4, I finished the program and I was like, oh my gosh, I think this is working. I think this is changing my life. I think I'm more regulated. I think I'm thinking clearly, et cetera, et cetera. And I remember my last session with my coach, I said, you know, should I be breathing with the tones with the app? They give you an app when you're done if you want to use it as
like maintenance.
Yeah, maintenance, like a maintenance plan. And I was all nervous because I was like, this is my thing right now. And if it's gone, like, am I going to go back to panic?
Right.
And she said to me, you know, a lot of times people report that they just feel better every day, like without the tones again. And I'm like, what? You mean you just keep feeling better? And knock on wood, I swear. I mean, as long as I can keep myself from being, you know, exerting too much energy and getting completely depleted. It's the depletion, which is the root cause right now of my anxiety, is just, my output. But overall, it has been the one thing that has changed my life from panic attacks and anxiety.
It is amazing.
And I know some insurances cover it, but if you're paying out of pocket, it's definitely expensive.
I looked into it because I'll try anything too, right? And I love the idea of a non-medicated way of treating, like I have CPTSD.
Same.
So I was like, whoa, that sounds fucking badass. But my insurance doesn't cover it, and the out-of-pocket cost for it is $2,000.
And I was covered at full because they were doing a pilot program with my insurance, and that's why I felt like it was a God wink, because I'm like, I mean, obviously I checked all the boxes for their pilot program, but the timing was just divine. I was like, oh, I was out of options. You know, I was just like, I need something else. And it was like, bing, here you go.
You know, that was kind of me with the ketamine, with the depression. Like I had tried every fucking thing. And then my therapist was like, what about therapeutic ketamine? And I was like, tell me more.
I feel like if you're not curious, it doesn't lead you to, desperate and curious. And I'm like trying to merge the two words together. I'm like, despurious? I don't know. But it's that.
Well, not being curious closes doors.
Yes.
Julie, thank you so much. Like, this was a really good conversation. I'm so glad we had it. You and I have talked about a lot of these things, but I still learned some things about you during this conversation, which I like.
Same.
Cool.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. This is the part in the show where Julie and I share a joy. So we share anything, big or little, that is bringing us joy. I'm going to go first. My joy just happened when Julie arrived. My joy is that Julie got out of her car at my house, saw that our tree swing is up, and she said, oh my God, can I swing on your swing? And this grown ass swung on this swing that my husband invented out of rope and found wood, and was just joying. Yes. You were just out there smiling, pumping your legs and swinging, and it made my heart happy. And it also signified for me that it is swing season, that spring is getting ready to sprung here, mid-April, Portland, Maine.
Yes.
Oh my God, we have been through it.
Yes, we have.
So that is my joy, is seeing you swing on our swing and be so happy and have that childlike happiness.
thanks for creating that amazing swing and opportunity. I mean, it really is the coolest swing I think I've ever seen.
That's
Ben
amazing.
did such a good job.
He did such a good job.
Yeah,
and he
it's
just
really
put it
special.
up today.
I love that. It's like I could just tell. I was like, give me that swing. I need it now.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
the fact that you are so you and so comfortable with me and us that you were like, I see a swing and I want to swing, baby.
Like, do you mind? Because like I got to get my swing on before we do this podcast.
So that's my joy share. Yeah, I love it.
So sweet. Well, thank you for sharing that. I'm so glad. Swinging is so joyful. It's so innocent. It's so playful.
Yes.
You know, yeah. As long as I can swing and not feel nauseous. I know when you get older, like that happens. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen.
Right.
I think my joy beyond swinging lately, because we just put up our little platform swing, and I took a swing on it yesterday with Finn. So my 5-year-old and I were just laying on that swing, looking up at the sky and just seeing the trees with the little buds on them and the clouds with the different patterns, and just sinking into that moment of just being outside together as a family too. My husband was there, and yeah, that brought me a lot of joy. But what really has been sparking joy for me lately is random dance parties. And I think Finn was kind of delayed in his excitement about not music, like his outward expression of music, so dancing. Cool. He's really into it now, and he's been really into the Beastie Boys.
Yes.
And so he'll put the Beastie Boys on, and we'll just have a dance party in our kitchen, and it just shakes up the energy. And I have been loving the songs that he's been picking, and they're always fun. And so I've been really finding joy in dancing and moving my body in however it wants to move in the moment that I'm in.
I love that. Yeah, dancing is one of my embodiment tools.
Yeah.
And I love
amazing.
It. Yeah, getting that energy through your whole body, engaging your whole body in a joyful activity.
Yes.
Yes, please.
And having no rules behind it. Just move however you feel like moving. Don't do it this one way. Don't do this thing. Just feel it and move in a way that feels good.
Well, and that's a beauty too of dancing with a 5-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I love about children that they don't have that embarrassment, that shame.
Nope.
And so they just do a damn thing.
Yep.
And we need more of that. Like,
kids are awesome.
Yeah, totally.
Role models for sure.
Yes. Julie, thank you so much. I'm so glad you're finally on the podcast. I'm so glad that we talked about anxiety. I'm so glad that you're in a great place with your anxiety, and so am I. Like,
because there's so much fun to be had on the other side. Yeah. So watch out, Portland, because Sally and Julie are gonna get our karaoke and dance on barricades coming up. You know?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing. And to my listeners, thank you for listening. I hope that some of the things that we said have resonated with you. I hope you feel seen, heard, and understood. And if you could get any tips or helpful things out of this, like, even better. But if you just don't feel so damn alone, that's a win. So thank you for listening. I seriously appreciate you spending an hour with us. And this is SallyAnn Gray, and you have been listening to Chin Hairs and F-Bombs, Conversations with Girlfriends.